My name is Brenda Mason, and for 7 years I'd been the steady hand behind campaigns that quietly succeeded while others grabbed headlines. Not the creative director with the flashy presentations. Not the account executive schmoozing clients over expensive lunches. Just the senior strategist who understood that marketing wasn't about being trendy, it was about understanding your audience so completely that you could predict their next move. I'd built my reputation on research others found tedious. While my colleagues chased the latest social media algorithms, I studied purchasing patterns, demographic shifts, and psychological triggers that lasted longer than viral trends. My campaigns might not win awards for aesthetic innovation, but they moved products. They built brands. They lasted. The Clark Industries account had landed on my desk in January. A mid-sized manufacturing company looking to rebrand their industrial cleaning supplies for a broader market. Not glamorous work, but exactly the kind of challenge I thrived on. I spent weeks interviewing facility managers, janitorial staff, and procurement officers. I learned about budget cycles, purchasing decisions, and the subtle psychology of industrial buyers who valued reliability over flash. My strategy was methodical: position Clark as the trustworthy choice, emphasize their 40-year track record, and target decision-makers who prioritized performance data over sleek packaging. The creative concept was clean, professional, and spoke directly to buyers' practical concerns. Nothing revolutionary, but it would work. Then Jamie Cross took over as marketing director. Jamie arrived in March with an Ivy League MBA and a track record of campaigns that looked stunning in award show reels but had mixed commercial results. He was 32, wore Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and spoke in buzzwords about disrupting traditional narratives and leveraging authentic engagement vectors. From his first day, Jamie made it clear that Gavins needed to evolve beyond outdated approaches. He favored younger staff members who spoke his language of viral content and influencer partnerships. During meetings, he'd interrupt presentations with comments about legacy thinking while scrolling through his phone. I watched him dismiss solid strategies in favor of concepts that prioritized visual impact over strategic foundation. Projects that had been carefully planned around client needs were suddenly reimagined to fit trending formats. Some succeeded through luck or sheer creative talent. Others fell flat when surface-level appeal couldn't compensate for fundamental misalignment with target audiences. Still, I kept my head down and did my work. The Clark campaign was progressing well. The client had approved my initial research findings and expressed enthusiasm about the strategic direction. We were scheduled to present creative concepts the following week. That's when Jamie called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon. "Brenda, we need to discuss the Clark situation," he said without looking up from his laptop. His office was a shrine to modern marketing excess, awards from campaigns at his previous agency, framed screenshots of viral posts, and a collection of energy drinks lined up like trophies. "I've been reviewing your work," he continued, finally making eye contact. "And honestly, I'm concerned we're not giving the client what they really need." I sat forward slightly. The client approved our strategic direction. They were particularly impressed with the research findings. Adrian waved dismissively. "Research is fine, but we're in the business of creating desire, not validating what already exists. Hartwell wants to break into new markets, and that requires fresh thinking. The strategy accounts for market expansion while building on their existing strengths." "Brenda." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "This isn't personal, but we need someone trendier on this account. Someone who understands current communication patterns. Frankly, you're not up to date with where marketing is heading." The words hit like cold water. Not up to date. After 7 years of consistently successful campaigns, after building strategies that generated millions in revenue, after understanding clients and their customers better than anyone else in this office. Adrian continued with practiced smoothness. "I'm reassigning the account to Jessica. She has some innovative ideas about social commerce integration and micro-influencer activation that could really elevate Hartwell's brand presence." Jessica. 26 years old, hired 6 months ago, with a portfolio heavy on Instagram campaigns and TikTok collaborations. Talented in her way, but she'd never worked with industrial clients. Had never spent time understanding the procurement processes that drove B2B purchasing decisions. "I understand," I said quietly. "Great. I knew you'd be professional about this." Adrian was already looking back at his screen. "Can you transfer your files to Jessica by end of day?" The presentation is Tuesday, so she'll need time to get up to speed. I walked back to my desk feeling hollow. Around me, the office continued its usual rhythm, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the distant hum of conversation from the break room. But everything felt different now. Smaller somehow. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing the situation with the methodical approach I applied to every professional challenge. Jamie's decision wasn't just wrong, it was strategically dangerous. Jessica was talented, but she lacked the contextual knowledge to serve this client effectively. More importantly, Jamie had made his decision based on assumptions about what clients wanted rather than actual understanding of their needs. This wasn't about my wounded ego. This was about professional competence and the responsibility we had to deliver results for clients who trusted us with their business growth. I began to plan. Friday morning, I handed over my files to Jessica with genuine warmth. She was nervous about the sudden responsibility and grateful for any guidance I could provide. I spent 2 hours walking her through my research, explaining the nuances of industrial marketing, and sharing insights about Hartwell's specific challenges. "Brenda, this research is incredible," she said, scrolling through customer interview summaries. "I had no idea industrial buyers thought about brands this way." "It's a different world from consumer marketing," I agreed. "But the principles are the same, you need to understand what drives their decisions." What I didn't mention was that I'd kept copies of everything. Not the client files themselves, that would have been unprofessional, but my own research notes, industry analysis, and strategic framework that I'd developed using my personal time and resources. Over the weekend, I refined my understanding of Clark's situation. I researched their competitors more deeply, analyzed market trends that supported my original strategy, and documented potential risks with alternative approaches. By Sunday evening, I had a comprehensive analysis that demonstrated why my original strategy was not just viable, but optimal for their specific needs. Monday arrived with unusual energy in the office. Jessica was working frantically to prepare her presentation, and Jamie was making rounds, building excitement about the fresh direction they were taking with Clark. I focused on other projects, but kept my ears open. By mid-afternoon, I'd learned that Jessica's new strategy centered around social media engagement and influencer partnerships, exactly the kind of approach that would fail with Clark's target audience of facility managers and procurement officers who made decisions based on specifications sheets, not Instagram posts. Tuesday morning brought nervous energy as the Clark presentation approached. Jamie was unusually animated, talking about revolutionary approaches to industrial branding while Jessica made final adjustments to her slides. At 2 p.m., they headed to the conference room for the video call with Clark's executive team. I remained at my desk, working on other projects but acutely aware of every sound from that direction. 45 minutes later, I heard the conference room door open with more force than usual. "That could have gone better," Jamie was saying, his voice tight with frustration. "But these things happen. We'll regroup and address their concerns." Jessica emerged looking deflated. "I don't understand," she was saying. "The creative was strong. The strategy was innovative." "Industrial clients are conservative," Adrian replied. "They need time to appreciate disruptive thinking." I continued working, but internally I was calculating. The presentation had clearly not gone as planned. Clark's team had probably asked practical questions that revealed the gap between trendy tactics and their actual business needs. Wednesday passed quietly. Jessica worked on revisions while Jamie held strategy sessions about managing client expectations and educating them about modern marketing approaches. Thursday brought tension. Jamie spent most of the morning on phone calls with his office door closed. Jessica looked increasingly stressed, making multiple trips to the coffee machine and staying late to work on alternative approaches. Friday morning, the explosion came. I was reviewing budget projections when Jamie's voice erupted from the hallway. "Why is the client demanding the old design?" He stormed into the main work area, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered. "Brenda, I need to see you immediately." I followed him to his office, where he slammed the door and wheeled around to face me. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Clark is refusing the new strategy. They're specifically asking for your original approach." "How is that possible?" I kept my voice level. "I'm not sure what you mean. I transferred all my files to Jessica last week. Don't play dumb with me." Jamie's face was flushed. "They mentioned specific elements from your research that weren't in the files Jessica received." Research about competitor positioning and market dynamics that directly contradict our new approach. My research was thorough, I replied calmly. Perhaps they retained more from our preliminary discussions than expected. This is sabotage. He pointed at me accusingly. You undermined this project because you were upset about being reassigned. I provided Jessica with everything she needed to succeed, I said. If the client prefers a different strategic direction, that's their decision to make. Jamie stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to determine how to respond. Finally, he spoke through gritted teeth. Fix this. Whatever you did, undo it. We're not losing this account because you can't handle professional disappointment. I'd be happy to help, I said. But I'll need to understand exactly what the client's concerns are. Perhaps we could schedule a call to discuss their feedback directly? What Jamie didn't know was that Clark had already called me. Tom Clark, the company's CEO, had my direct number from our preliminary research phase. Wednesday afternoon, he'd reached out with questions about market positioning that Jessica couldn't answer. When he expressed frustration with the strategic shift, I'd listened professionally and offered to provide additional context if needed. I hadn't violated any ethical boundaries. I'd simply remained available to clarify research I'd conducted, using my own analytical framework developed outside company time. When Tom asked direct questions about industrial marketing best practices, I'd provided honest, professional responses based on my expertise. The result was that Clark's leadership team had a clearer understanding of why my original strategy aligned with their business objectives while the new approach carried significant risks for their target market. Monday brought the inevitable confrontation. Jamie had spent the weekend trying to salvage the situation, but Clark's team was adamant. They wanted the original strategic approach, and they wanted me leading the account. This is unacceptable, Jamie declared during an emergency meeting with senior leadership. We can't let clients dictate our internal staffing decisions. James Morrison, our managing partner, listened patiently before responding. Jamie, our primary obligation is delivering results for clients. If Clark specifically requests Brenda's involvement, we need to consider their perspective seriously. But the precedent this sets. The precedent is that we prioritize client success over internal politics, James interrupted. Brenda, can you walk us through why the client might prefer your original approach? I'd prepared for this moment carefully. Clark operates in a highly regulated industrial market where purchasing decisions are made by technical professionals who value proven performance over innovative presentation. My strategy focused on building credibility with facility managers and procurement officers who control 68% of their potential customer base. These buyers rely on peer recommendations, technical specifications, and vendor track records when selecting suppliers. I continued with data-supported analysis. The alternative approach prioritized social media engagement and influencer marketing, which are ineffective channels for reaching industrial decision-makers. Our research indicated that 73% of their target audience discover new vendors through trade publications and industry associations, not social platforms. James nodded thoughtfully. What about the creative execution? Industrial buyers respond to clear communication about product benefits, compliance certifications, and comparative performance data. The original creative strategy emphasized Clark's 40-year track record and superior cleaning performance while maintaining visual professionalism appropriate for procurement environments. Jamie interjected with visible frustration. This is exactly the kind of outdated thinking that's holding our industry back. Modern marketing requires embracing new platforms and engagement methods. I agree that innovation is important, I replied calmly. But effective strategy matches communication methods to audience behavior. Industrial buyers aren't rejecting new approaches because they're conservative, they're following established procurement processes that minimize risk and ensure product performance. James looked between us. Brenda, what would you need to execute the original strategy effectively? 3 weeks to refine the creative execution, coordinate with Clark's internal team, and develop implementation timelines. The strategic framework is solid, but the execution needs adjustment based on their feedback. Jamie, what are your concerns about returning to the original approach? Jamie's jaw tightened. It sends the wrong message about our agency's direction. We're trying to position Gavin's as a forward-thinking partner, not a traditional service provider stuck in legacy approaches. But if the traditional approach generates better results for this specific client, isn't that exactly the kind of strategic thinking we should be known for? James asked pointedly. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, James made his decision. Brenda, you'll resume leadership of the Clark account. Jamie, I want you to work with her to understand how we can apply these insights to other industrial clients. Jamie's face went through several expressions before settling on professional resignation. Of course. Whatever serves the client's needs. But I could see in his eyes that this wasn't over. Tuesday afternoon, Jamie requested a private meeting. I expected retaliation or political maneuvering, but his approach was more subtle. Brenda, I want to apologize for how this situation developed, he began. I may have been too hasty in reassigning the account. I appreciate that, I replied cautiously. However, I'm concerned about how the client learned about strategic details that weren't included in the official handoff. It creates questions about information management that we need to address. Here it was, the attempt to create grounds for disciplinary action. I'm not sure what you're referring to, I said. All official project files were transferred to Jessica as requested. But somehow the client had access to research insights that influenced their decision to reject our new strategy. Research that seemed to anticipate and counter our revised approach. I met his gaze steadily. My research was comprehensive and client-focused. If they retained information from our preliminary discussions, that demonstrates the value of thorough initial consultation. Brenda, we both know you had contact with the client after being removed from the account. I need to understand the nature of those communications. This was the crucial moment. I could deflect or minimize, but that would give Adrian ongoing leverage. Instead, I chose complete transparency. Tom Clark called me Wednesday afternoon with questions about market positioning. As the researcher who conducted the original analysis, I provided professional clarification about industrial marketing dynamics. I didn't share proprietary company information or criticize internal decisions. I simply answered questions about publicly available market data and general industry practices. Jamie leaned forward. You spoke with our client without authorization after being removed from their account. That's a serious violation of protocol. I provided expert consultation to a client who requested clarification about research I'd conducted. No confidential information was shared, no company policies were violated, and the client received better service as a result. That's not your decision to make, Jamie said firmly. All client communications must go through designated account management. You're absolutely right, I agreed. Which is why I documented the conversation and forwarded a summary to Jessica that same evening. You can review it if you'd like. Jamie's expression shifted slightly. He clearly hadn't expected me to have documentation. I also want to mention, I continued, that during our conversation, Tom expressed appreciation for our agency's depth of expertise and commitment to understanding their business. He specifically mentioned that having access to the researcher behind the strategic recommendations gave him confidence in our overall capabilities. This was true, and it reframed the situation. Rather than unauthorized client contact, it became an example of exceptional service and expertise accessibility. Jamie sat back, recalculating his approach. In the future, all client communications need prior approval from account leadership. Absolutely, I agreed. I'll make sure Jessica and I establish clear protocols for any technical questions that arise during implementation. After Jamie left, I realized this confrontation had actually strengthened my position. By being completely transparent about my actions and demonstrating that they'd served the client's interests professionally, I'd eliminated his ability to use this situation against me later. The following weeks brought vindication as the Clark campaign moved forward. The client's enthusiasm was evident in every interaction. Tom Clark personally thanked me for the thoroughness of our research and the relevance of our strategic recommendations. Their internal team engaged actively with implementation planning, asking detailed questions that demonstrated genuine buy-in. More importantly, other industrial clients began requesting similar strategic approaches. Word spread through industry networks that Gavin's had deep expertise in B2B marketing, and we received inquiries from manufacturing companies, logistics providers, and professional services firms seeking partners who understood their unique challenges. James Morrison noticed the trend. During our monthly agency review, he highlighted the success of research-driven campaigns and emphasized the value of matching strategy to audience characteristics rather than following generic trend adoption. Brenda's work with Clark demonstrates exactly the kind of strategic thinking that differentiates Gavin's from agencies that prioritize style over substance, he announced to the senior staff. We're seeing increased interest from industrial clients who want partners that understand their specific market dynamics. Jamie nodded politely, but his discomfort was obvious. His vision of transforming Gavin's into a trendy creative boutique was being challenged by evidence that our strength lay in strategic expertise and client-specific problem-solving. 3 months later, the results spoke definitively. Clark's rebranding campaign exceeded all performance metrics. Brand recognition among target buyers increased 47%. Lead generation from key demographics rose 31%. Most importantly, actual sales increased 23% in the first quarter following launch. The success attracted attention from industry publications and professional organizations. Clark's case study became a reference point for effective industrial marketing, and our agency received recognition for strategic excellence. I was promoted to Senior Strategic Director, with authority over all B2B accounts and industrial marketing initiatives. Jessica, who had learned valuable lessons about audience-specific strategy development, became my primary research coordinator. She'd evolved from trend-focused creative work to understanding the deeper analytical foundations that drive successful campaigns. Jamie remained marketing director, but his influence over strategic decisions was significantly diminished. Senior leadership valued innovation, but they'd learned to distinguish between meaningful strategic advancement and superficial trend adoption. 6 months after that confrontation in Jamie's office, I attended the regional marketing conference where Clark's CEO was scheduled to speak about successful rebranding strategies. During his presentation, he specifically credited our agency's research-driven approach and detailed understanding of industrial buyer behavior. Too many agencies want to apply consumer marketing tactics to industrial situations, Tom said from the podium. Gavin's took time to understand our customers' decision-making processes and built a strategy around actual buying behavior rather than assumptions about what modern marketing should look like. After his presentation, Tom found me in the networking reception. Brenda, I wanted to thank you again for your work on our campaign. But more than that, I wanted you to know that your approach influenced how we think about all our vendor relationships now. We're looking for partners who prioritize understanding over assumptions. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the lessons learned from this experience. Professional competence isn't about following trends or impressing colleagues with innovative terminology. It's about understanding problems completely and developing solutions that actually work. Jamie's dismissal of my abilities as not up to date had revealed his own limitations more than mine. True expertise means knowing when traditional approaches serve clients better than trendy alternatives, and having the confidence to advocate for strategic soundness over superficial appeal. The marketing industry will always celebrate innovation and creative breakthrough. But beneath the awards and recognition, success is measured by results achieved for real businesses facing real challenges. Sometimes the most modern approach is simply understanding your audience completely and serving their needs without compromise. That understanding made all the difference.